Welcome everyone to today's talk for this Heart of Compassion weekend session at Mountain Cloud. What a gift to bring our hearts with all they hold into this place of wide welcome, into the spaciousness of this shared practice. Shared, I'm always saying shared. It calls up a poem posted late on the night of the election by Rosemary Watola Tromer. The poem is titled, "When You Ask Me If I Can Say Yes to the World as It Is." November 5th, 2024. Here's her poem. Today, yes is made of lead. You look at me, and I nod, and together we carry the weight. Our practice sees this yes made of lead and calls it boundless compassion. The leading into the talk just now, we chanted the Kanzeon Sutra, this famous old sutra, in a rendering by that name, boundless compassion. Not somewhere else. Right here. One here. This Buddha, the source of compassion, this Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, why are they treasures? How can it be that nothing is excluded? Just compassion. The just in this exclamation is what Zen calls wisdom. It's the gone beyond in the Heart Sutra, this empty, infinite, nothing to obscure, nothing impeding or hindering anything. Nothing at all. This total freedom. Gone to the other shore. Right here. That shore. Just. And out of that, the wellspring of compassion. Unconditional oneness. Each thing, whatever you pick up, complete. Actually, all of it. Wherever we turn, not just interconnected, your own intimate face. This world is divided, and yet the fact of who we truly are does not divide. It started snowing here the morning after the election and went on without abating for 2 days. Sky and earth, the same color. It seemed to be weeping upward. So turning toward this weekend, what to say, how to help. So this word teisho, word we use for a Dharma talk, Zen talk. Many of you know it literally means presentation of the shout. Shout we heard from Kenon in our chant. But what if the shout that rings out is help? Bereft of words. But the Dharma does speak. And so do the ancestors. Two early Chan Mahayana Zen ancestors come to mind. Maybe because of the circumstances at the time when they lived and practiced and taught. They have parallel in a way, though living in very different parts of China, so they never met, but they knew of each other. One is Shirtu or Sekito, and the other Baso or Mazu. So here's just a word about their circumstances. It's from an essay of this particular description by Joan Sutherland. The Yan Lushan Rebellion ushered in a decade of civil war, famine, and disease, so devastating that 2 out of 3 Chinese died. 2 out of 3. At the time, China was the largest population in the world, and it shrank by 2/3. And it happened, she goes on, in the blink of an eye. China went from being one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen to a nation devastated by conflict and starvation, and its population had shrunk by 2/3 in about 10 years. A kind of order was eventually restored, but it would be centuries before the country fully recovered. So that civil war started in 755. Sekito was 55 and Baso 46. So here's just a taste of their teaching, which I have found helpful to keep company with the last couple days. So with Sekito or Shirtu, more than once maybe, a monk asked him, "What is the way?" And the response, "What meets the eye is the way." And then we have this famous poem, this long verse, just a few lines from that. "Within light there is darkness, but do not try to understand that darkness. Within darkness there is light, but do not look for that light. Light and darkness are a pair, like the foot before and the foot behind in walking. This one body." And then hear a word from Baso or Mazu. A monk comes asking, "What is the essential meaning of Buddhism?" And Baso says, "What is the meaning of this moment?" We're invited to taste and see. That's what this immersion is about. And then another one of his disciples asks, "What is the essential import of the school, this school?" Baso says, "It's just the place where you let go of your body and life." What might that be? What if our hands are really already empty? Another verse that's been circulating is by this great 8th century poet and civil servant Du Fu, who was trapped in the ancient capital city of Chang'an during that An Lushan rebellion. And he wrote a poem called The View This Spring. Just the first 2 lines. The nation is destroyed. Mountains and rivers remain. Today, yes is made of lead. Or maybe grief, maybe fear. And yet, I'm reminded of Katagiri Roshi's teaching. He said, continue under all circumstances. Make positive effort for the good. And don't be tossed away. Then alongside that teaching, a word from a meeting earlier in the week with a student before the election was decided. And the student said, I'm leaning forward with things I'm afraid of. And then they shared what had emerged as a new mantra for practice, for their practice. A beginner's leap back to the start. The bravest word. Hello, heart. Beginner's leap. Back to the start. So, hello, heart. Beginning now. Your heart and the one heart. Not 2. A few weeks ago, I took part in a conference on the evolution of women in Buddhism. It was at Bodhimanda Zen Center, just a ways that way. On the 3rd day of that conference, Maria Habito, dear friend, known to us here at Mountain Cloud, she gave a talk on the evolution of Guanyin Kannon Kanzeon, this figure, Avalokiteshvara, in the Heart Sutra. The evolution from male to a female figure. And in the course of her talk, Maria told the story of Kannon's awakening to the sound of waves lapping onto the shore of an island. One of many versions of the story. In this telling, Kannon is a girl, young, but with a younger brother. Their parents are poor, so poor they can no longer afford to feed their kids. So they take them to an island and leave them. The girl, the older sibling, is afraid. She sits down to meditate by a cave. As she sits and listens, waves of tide flow in and out of the cave. Just in, out, in, out. Over time, the difference between sound and silence merges, subsides. Everything goes still. The space between hearer and heard dissolves. Completely gone. Kanon awakens to the sounds of the whole world. Hearer of the cries, seer of the sounds, Kanon is called, without the slightest gap. She then appears in various forms over the centuries, genderless, male, female, sometimes often with 1,000 arms and an eye in the palm of each hand. So responding moment to moment, such that cry and response are one fact. As I mentioned earlier, one giving, receiving. Indivisible, and yet showing itself exactly in this awful division. There's a koan tucked into the miscellaneous koans, the collection that follows an initial opening or Kensho experience in this Sambo Zen tradition. The koans help to clarify the world that one is then immersed in. So these are all about the awake world. And this one that we're going to look at points to Kanon. It's been called an after-sitting koan, not just awake, but how therefore shall we live? So this is the third of a series, a little short series called Shogun's Three Turning Words. Master Shogun. It's one line, a question. Why is it that the crimson lines of a clearly enlightened person never cease to flow? The crimson lines have come to be associated with the lines of tears. Though early on, they may have been related to passion as well. So passion, compassion. Enlightened or not, we are creaturely beings. I do appreciate it that in Sambo Zen, this turning word comes down to us as a turn toward Kanon, the Bodhisattva of great compassion. Not some figure out there to be idolized, but you awake to in as the one body, uncompromisingly one, our abbot says. Awake and alive in your own grief. Awake and alive in whatever arises in your own heart, as long as it's a beacon of the mercy and compassion that is the fabric of this very moment. How can that be? We might be inclined to ask. That one existence coming forth in each and everything is fundamentally indivisible. Zen does ask. And the koans answer. Not with a fill in the blank, but with a living taste of what this life really is. A turning word. So let's just look briefly at the first two turning words of this master Shogun. The sort of pivots or realizations that then issue in compassion, issue in the one heart that never ceases to flow. So first, they're very short. Shogun asks, how is it that a person of great strength does not lift up their leg? From Shogun's context, we might picture a sumo wrestler, a person of great strength. But it could just be you. Rearranging your sitting, standing up, taking a step. Can you do that without lifting a leg? What's the koan pointing to? What is this? And then Shogun's second turning word. Again, one line. It is not with the tongue that we speak. Oh, sometimes people come to face this early on and will do something like, that's not what it's about. There's nothing to avoid. Shogun isn't contorting reality. He's laying it bare. It is not with the tongue that we speak. What is this speaking? And who's doing it? What if not lifting a leg or speaking without a tongue is the just in just compassion? That empty, infinite fact. No fixed substance, no subject, no object, and no place for anything like a separate self to reside. Tonight we'll chant the Heart Sutra. And there's this line that just rings out. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No, nada, nada. Gone, 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 can unrealized. And springing from that, inexorably, nothing but compassion. Why is it that the tears of a clearly enlightened person never cease to flow? Looking at our world, we might say, you don't have to be enlightened for that. Wherever you are in this tectonic time, hearts are breaking, shattered. But what if the compassion that springs from this selfless wisdom doesn't depend on the times? Sutra tells us, in the light we call this, in the dark we call this, moment by moment, time after time. Now, what if the flowing is by nature without ceasing? Fundamental nature. What if it's what you are? What if it's that there is anything at all. Just compassion. Just a quick note, there's a line in this Boundless Compassion Sutra that reads, "Thus the pure heart always rejoices." How many times I stumbled on that over the years. Always rejoicing. If that's the measure, my heart isn't true. That was the kind of dialogue, the inner dialogue. But this is Kanaan. Hearing every sound, present to every cry, and singing to the world a joy beyond measure, a rejoicing that breaks our hearts all the way open, all the way. Early this morning, Kieran posted a passage, in this wonderful 30 days of Zen. If you're not doing it, you might consider. They're really so helpful, so beautifully crafted. But today, he started with a passage from Yamada Konroshi's Zen, the Authentic Gate. And I'm just going to share it. So this is Konroshi. Compassion that is unbound naturally flows out when subject has been eliminated and object has been transcended. So this I, other, just dissolved. As for Kanaan. Roshi goes on, it is an absolute and universal love, the compassion of one single body. As we gradually clarify the heart's eye, the absolute I, we more and more clearly experience this unbound compassion and come to fully understand that we love everything with an infinitely deep love, and that all things completely love us. What discontent could there be, he writes? Where is antagonism, hatred, jealousy, or anger? A life of infinite gratitude and peace naturally opens. Konroshi is not offering a panacea. He was keenly aware of the antagonisms of the world, of the suffering. When he died, Konroshi's students commissioned a statue of Kanaan that stands now in Kamakura on the place where his cremains are interred. When this week unfolded, somehow the picture moved from a bookshelf to a place of prominence, and I found it helpful. She's been on our altar, and to see if, infinite gratitude and peace. So Konroshi discovered this out of his deeply committed practice and at least one powerful awakening experience. Then he tried to help others. One of his basic teachings that many have found helpful is this fraction that he loved to lift up. a fraction where whatever the numerator is, whatever number you put there, each one sitting here, flowers, the candle, whatever it is that's arising, there's the numerator, distinct, discrete. And right under it is the denominator, the zero. The zero that makes whatever that fraction is equal to everything. Some years ago, Henry posted a brief reflection on these crimson lines that never cease to flow. Henry wrote, "We are grief machines. We are gratitude machines. We are humility machines. And we are compassion machines. The rest is distraction." Knowing Henry, he wasn't dismissing the great variety of emotions and sensations that arise in the course of this practice. He may have been inviting us to see them, each one, as a human experience, calling for allowing, calling for our tending, and as a numerator over zero, intrinsically empty. This boundless reality that we are soaking in. The zero that makes everything what it is. So where does all this land us, if indeed we land? In that essay of Joan Sutherland's, she uses the phrase, this broken, blasted world. Right in the middle of it. And right in the middle of love. Love that actually has no opposite. I'm just going to close with a passage from the writer Rebecca Solnit, who wrote a passage in response to the election, and it's another one of those that's been circulating, for some helpful. It's a call to fierce compassion or resilient compassion we've been hearing about lately. Here's just the end of it. Some of you may have heard this already. She writes, "Take care of yourself and remember that taking care of something else is an important part of taking care of yourself, because you are interwoven with the 10 trillion things in this single garment of destiny that has been stained and torn, but is still being woven and mended and washed. A single garment, the fabric of our lives. So let's go on offering it. Offering all of it in the silence of our sitting. Thanks for this shared practice.